All right. Welcome, everybody. Sorry, I didn't have the normal, our little musical interlude that we normally have. I left my iPod at home. My bad. So you had to actually talk amongst yourselves. I apologize for that. So, anyways, welcome, everybody, to the Seattle Revit User Group. My name is Rob Bendix, SeaRUG President. And for those of you that have not been here before, I know most of you have, see a lot of familiar faces. We are local AEC community technology group. We have a big emphasis on Revit, BIM, collaboration. Obviously, we definitely want to maintain a free and collaborative learning environment for everybody in the area, and ideally we want to make sure that all disciplines are represented in the information and sharing, because it's really, that's what BIM's all about, right? So, per today's little topic, it's kind of funny, you look back when you first get into Revit, you never really realize all the different philosophies and options regarding detailing. And so I'm glad that Chris is here, just going to show off a bunch of this stuff. You know, detailing just seems to be such an important component of what we do with Revit and modeling and collaboration, because, you know, it's really the backbone. It's the devil's in the details, right? I like to equate, if you're a golfer out there, you know, drive for show, putt for dough, right? So driving's the models. You know, those are the fun part. That's the cool, the fun factor. But you know what? It's really all about the detailing that really makes the whole thing come together. So, so I'm really glad. I'm really looking forward to the presentation that Chris has today on detailing. Some other announcements regarding our partners, of course, our sponsor partners, our executive sponsors. Let me start over. Take two. 1-0. Our executive sponsors for 2013. Obviously, we really appreciate their efforts, as well as all of our sponsors. PPI Group, ID8, and Imaginative Technologies have been good supporters, or great supporters of us over the past many years. Of course, our premier partners, Tetra 4D, Canon Solutions America, and Quarry Group, who is actually this month's host sponsor with Chris here. So we'll hear a little bit from Chris about the Quarry Group here in a few minutes. As well as a lot of the firms in the area that are associate sponsors of 2013. Groups Wood Harbinger, Freiheit and Ho Architects, GLY Construction, Mulvaney G2 Architecture, Lyday Construction, PCS Structural Solutions, FSI Consulting Engineers, Inventrix Engineering, and Integris Architecture. So if you are considering sponsorship in any one of these capacities, then definitely you can go to our meetup site, to the SeaRUG Meetup SeaRUG page, and the Pages tab has some information about sponsorship. And seeing that the year's slowly getting away from us, we're at the halfway point, pretty much, but it's not too far out to think about 2014. So if it's something you think about, maybe you can jump on and join us and support us for 2014. Some other announcements. Revit Update 1, how many people saw that came out just recently? Actually, I was looking for something else on an update on one of our programs, and I found that Revit 2014 Update 1 is out. Just got released last week. So they actually have quite a bit of enhancements that they fixed, updates, changes. This is just a quick little summary. This is not the whole list. I actually just kind of captured some components, some highlights from each of the different disciplines, as well as the overall package. So I'll just quickly kind of buzz through those. A lot of stability and issues that got updated. I mean, 2014 was kind of a major change, so I guess it's no surprise that there's a lot of enhancements and fixes that came out. Here's some structure updates, some graphics, beams. So who knows, maybe some of these issues you ran across that you can go, yes, I need to get that updated. Handful of MEP updates. These will all be posted. This is all on a PDF list. So as soon as you go to get your update, you'll see all these plus a whole series more. I just wanted to, like I said, just grab some of the highlights and some of the overall platform exporting, if you use that, rendering in cloud. I know we use that a lot, so see some of those, a handful of improvements there. This was interesting, maintains display order of filled regions which overlap solid hatches in projects that are upgraded to 2014. So if you've already upgraded your project, sorry, you gotta go fix it. But, you know, there are a lot of companies. How many have like a policy that, you know, I don't upgrade until first service pack comes out? There's usually quite a few that actually do that. So this would probably be one of those good opportunities to start looking, start maybe planning your upgrade now that the service pack is out. It sounds like they've fixed a lot of stability and some performance issues as well. So go get that. Got an email the other day from a group at Pierce College. They're actually starting development of a BIM and virtual construction certification program. So they are looking for some volunteers. They asked me if I could spread the word, and I said I absolutely can. Looking for 4 to 6 volunteers to serve on a curriculum development committee. So if you have some expertise, you want to give back to a school, maybe you're in that area, maybe you went to that school, or you just want to give back to help support a startup certificate program. They are meeting, there's no actual date yet, but they're meeting at the end of September at the Fort Silicon campus in Lakewood. Probably going to be like one of those all-day events or something. And then if you want, Stephen Bridgeport, is Stephen here? He said he might, oh, there he is. Can you stand up for just a quick second? Okay, so if you have any questions, information, or want to get some more information, Stephen's right here. You can find him afterwards. As well as here's his email and phone number, and these will be posted as well. So if you want to get in contact, so I think it'd probably be a worthwhile venture to be part of a startup curriculum for a school. So appreciate you reaching out to us as well. Thanks, Stephen. Okay, other events. I mentioned this last month. Autodesk University 2013 is launching. Registration starts September 12th. Actually, that was a change because last month it was like August 28th. And so I went up just to verify the date and say, oh, it's September 12th now. So I go, okay, whatever. So September 12th. If you're looking for some inexpensive airfare, they do have a little partnership with United Airlines. They're offering a discount code for flights. And you can also get all this information at au.autodesk.com. So yeah, you definitely, if you're considering going, you might want to get your information in. One thing I actually kind of like they did for people that wanted to maybe save a few bucks is they separated. I think the last year was the first year they did it. They actually separated the hotel fee from the conference fee. So if you have friends down there, or if you have an inexpensive hotel deal through your company, or you're completely fine with staying at the Motel 6. Then that's your option that they give to you, which is kind of cool. I know that was on a lot of people's recommendations, so they started doing that. The other thing is CAD Americas is coming back this year at Renton Technical College. It's on September 6th. It's a one-day event. It's just shy of $200, and you can go to the website cadamericas.com. They have all sorts of stuff that they cover, not just Revit, but they cover CAD and civil and MEP and structural. They kind of cover the whole gamut, even like CAD management as well. So if you're interested in like a one-day learning event, that's a good place to go check out. That's local. That's the former CAD Camp. Yes, exactly. Anybody remembers CAD Camp? Rebranded. Okay. Okay, about our drawings. Again, I mention this each time because we're still relatively new with our meetup site. So I always like to put out there that when you RSVP for sessions, you get thrown in the drawing automatically. So if you're here and you didn't RSVP, maybe you're the +1 or +2. Sorry, didn't get you in the drawing this time. But maybe if you go and join on the group, the next time you register and come to a meeting, you'll get thrown into the drawing. So that's what we encourage people. So we have 2 Amazon gift cards that we're going to give courtesy of SeaRUG. So I have you all right here. All right. So we'll do that as soon as the meeting wraps up. Okay, sponsor recognition. Like I mentioned earlier, obviously we can't do these without our sponsorships. these contributions that we get from groups like Quarry Group, groups like organizations is like Quarry Group, to really, rent the space, feed lunch, opportunity to network and meet up with some other like-minded people in our industry. Who knows, maybe there's been some really good professional relationships that have been started from here, projects that have blossomed out of this, and those type of collaborations, and that's really what makes it enjoyable to be part of this. So special thanks to this month's sponsor, Quarry Group. And so it's kind of a double introduction in the sense that Chris is going to come up and talk a little bit about the Quarry Group, what their team does, and he's also going to be giving today's presentation on detailing in Revit. So welcome Chris up. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Rob. Okay. Morning, everybody. As Rob said, my name is Chris Hubbard, and I'm the Chief Technical Lead for Quarry Group. I'm an architect by trade, and I'm the actual owner and president of Quarry Group. And we started Quarry Group back in 2006 because we saw this shift into BIM and the severe lack of implementation amongst architecture and design engineering firms, and have since sort of evolved into both BIM management and some other various issues. Okay. We actually consult with a number of different firms in Seattle and around the country to assist them with their various BIM needs. So Quarry Group can certainly help you if you guys need assistance with your BIM, either beginning or intermediate or advanced. We can certainly work with your firm on those. We provide services in BIM strategies, BIM standards, BIM project management, BIM training, various types of training, design and construction modeling, constructability review. And myself, I'm the principal architect and principal consultant for Quarry Group, and I've been using Revit since release 4.5, so back in 2003, I think. I've also used AutoCAD for 20 plus years, and prior to that used Intergraph 3D modeling, as well as ArchiCAD and Bentley Bentley MicroStation, Bentley BIM. And I'm a registered architect here in Washington, have a Master of Architecture from Lawrence Tech in Michigan. Modeling services. So we've been doing a lot of modeling for contractors, owners, even design teams to assist them with their BIM services. We just recently completed a large modeling service for a couple of subcontractors on the Husky Stadium project. We've also done a series of construction models, shop drawings, layout, identification, quality control, and quantity takeoff models. And then we also work for design teams, helping them set up their content, building custom families for them, getting their systems and templates all set up and ready to go. Okay, so here's some of our coordination takeoff models. We've also worked for owners doing as-built and facility management models. One of our latest services that we've been doing for a lot of our client teams are BIM management. So we work for either a contractor or in some cases the architect managing the BIM process throughout design and construction and on into ownership. And so some of the things we'll do is set up a BIM execution plan to help them work their way through the process. We have BIM websites that we've set up that let people upload and download models, exchange information, and sort of other things to help people collaborate inside a BIM environment. So if people are interested in that, we can certainly help you set up your models. We can help you set up your project. We can do quality control reviews. We have constructability reviews as well, and collaboration tools so we can figure out what you guys need to work on, areas of the model that are problematic and areas of the model that are really, really put well together. Okay. So today we're going to discuss detailing in Revit. So let me see a show of hands. How many people here detail exclusively in Revit? So about a third. How many people detail exclusively in CAD? How many are 50-50? Okay. So we're going to discuss some common issues with detailing, why people don't do it. We're going to look at the tools that Revit uses to help you to assist you in detailing. We'll look at 2D detailing and 3D detailing, and we'll discuss the pros and cons of each. We'll talk about how you customize your detail component families, and then kind of create an overall strategy for detailing, and then we've got a question and answer period. So, some common issues with detailing, or roadblocks as I put them. So the first one I always hear from people is, well, if you do it in Revit, then all your details have to be 3D, okay? Doing your details in Revit makes your file size go crazy. And detailing is slower than if I do it in CAD. And Revit has poor, and I use the word poor, but I've heard various other adjectives used for Revit's drafting tools, okay? I won't use the four-letter word that I've heard a number of times. Okay, so number one, all details must be in 3D. False, okay? Revit has tons of two-dimensional only tools to help you build your 2D details. Okay. Drafting views, which have been in Revit since I think release 2, so some time now, were specifically designed for people to draft 2D details. Okay. They have very little other purpose. Details increase the file size. Also false. So they do very little to add to the file size. Obviously, as you add stuff to your file, the file gets bigger. However, most 2D detail components and lines and text add very, very little to the file size. Our models typically between DD and CD, we see 5 to 10% of file size increase. Okay. Detailing is slower than CAD. Now this one's a bit of a loaded question because slower is somewhat subjective. Okay. So, but if done correctly, we think Revit can save you time in your detailing. So the first one is printing from a single system and file. So when we tried to do composite detailing, and we had sheets and sheets and sheets of AutoCAD details and sheets and sheets and sheets of Revit drawings, it took us all day to plot. We had to set up special dummy views, we had to set up dummy sheets, we had to go back and check every single CAD detail to make sure that the references were correct, and then we had to plot and plot and plot and plot and plot. Okay. Utilizing the model to use as part of the detail. Okay. So Revit's model can show you a lot of information that you don't have to redraw. Faster revisions. If the model changes, those areas that are already being driven by the model won't have to be redrawn or edited or changed. And then increasing in annotation speed and accuracy. So we've got some annotation tricks that'll help you guys improve your annotation speed, and then you won't have to be typing text notes all day long. So Revit has poor drafting tools, also subjective. Okay. Revit has different drafting tools. So we miss the precision and the snaps and the awesome editing tools that AutoCAD has. Okay. The ability to extend multiple objects, the multi-trim, the fence commands, and all those other tools that AutoCAD has developed over the last 30 years specifically for drawing. Because remember, that's all AutoCAD does, is it draws. Okay? So Revit has never invested in those tools because Revit does so much more. There's really not a need for that if you learn how to use Revit's detailing tools the way that they were intended to be used. Okay? So what we look for is using components and pieces of the model rather than drafting from scratch. Okay? So Revit's drawing and editing tools do not equal CAD. Okay? That is clear. AutoCAD's drawing tools are much more superior than Revit's basic drawing tools. Okay? But if you use them properly, you will save time and effort. Okay. Now, the way that we see it is setting up your details at the beginning correctly will allow you to move through the system a little bit better. Okay? So the first thing is rather than use drafting views, we want people to use the detail tool and the section view tool. Okay? So a couple reasons for this. First of all, you can utilize the model if you choose. Okay? It's not required, so you can turn the model off in your detail views. Number two, your details are then organized together. So if you look, here's a shot from our, right here, oops, sorry. Okay, where we organize all of our details together. And you can see that each detail type has its own folder under our project browser. Okay, very easy to do. And we'll talk about this a little later. We have pre-built view templates that already set up most of what we want it to do when the detail is created. So it comes out of the box all ready to go, and all we have to do then is fill in some of the blanks. And there's less chance of incorrect references. Okay? So when you guys use a drafting view and then you cut a section cut to reference that detail, you have to pick from a list at the top of Revit that in the options bar, and there's 300-400 different views in there. It's very difficult to figure out which one you need, and if you pick the wrong one, then your detail has the wrong sheet and detail number. So, utilizing the model. So this is direct from the detail cut, and what I did was I turned the view template off on this one and turned it on this one. Okay? So in this case, this would be a detail that was cut, and you can see we've got roofing materials, we've got our fascia, we've got our roof joist, we've got some structural, and we've got ceiling and joists already ready to go. Now, if we were going to just go straight forward with this detail, we would leave it alone. But by applying a view template to it, we halftone it, first of all, and then we apply a second view template, the model goes away entirely, and all we're looking at is our drawing, our drafting. Okay? So just by utilizing the model as both either an underlay or as part of the detail, we're already ahead of the game as far as drafting is concerned. We set up our details to have different types so that when we cut a detail, we pick the right type, and Revit automatically puts our details in folders together. This way, we don't have 1,000 details under the quote-unquote detail view in Revit. I have to scroll down through that list over and over again. We can open up the roof details and just look at roof details. We can open up the door details and just look at door details. Templates. So as I pointed out, okay, we've got view templates up here already set up. So we've got, oh, can't see that up there, okay. So we've got 1.5-inch details. We've got 3-inch details, 3-inch HS head jam sill details, and we've got a generic detail. Okay. What those view templates do is they set up the model, they set up the view to display the model the way we want it to, and to display all the items the way we want it to. It can update line weights, it can update, turn off linked views, it can turn off CAD, it can turn off whatever else we want. So our view templates are preset, ready to go. So when a user cuts a detail and they pick the right type, it automatically creates the detail in the way they want it to be. Okay, and incorrect references. So this is the list of views that are available to use as references for a particular section cut. Okay, and you can see the list is quite long. Now, luckily, Revit does show you the number and sheet that you're referencing to, but it is very easy, and I've done it hundreds of times, to accidentally click one above or one below. And then your detailing system falls apart very, very quickly. Okay? Okay. So, detailing tools. So, number one, with 3D tools equaling 2D details. So, we're going to use the model element to start our details whenever we can. So, system families, walls, floors, and roofs. So again, we use view templates to save time. Okay. And what we're looking at here is a detail that I just cut. Okay, it's all set to go. And if I don't have a view template, I usually do things 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, I set the scale. Okay. 2, I set the level of detail. 3, I crop it the way I want it. And 4, I set the visibility controls. So I do all that when I create the detail rather than later down the road. Okay. Now, if we've got a template, it can save me the time of having to do 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, or 2, or 3, or 4, depending on how the template's set up. Okay? Parts. How many people here have used parts? Few? Okay. So, anybody know what parts were originally created for? Yes, they were created. Rob said contractors. He is correct. They were created for contractors because something like a wall or a floor or a roof has 4 or 5 different trades in it, and we can't combine them all together. Okay, so we've got a steel deck, we've got rebar, we've got concrete, or in a wall's case, we've got GWB, we've got insulation, and we've got metal studs. Those might be from 3 different groups or 3 different contractors, and they'll probably go into the model at 3 different times. So Revit lets you split the parts out so that you can control the timing of the various pieces. However, the parts also make awesome detailing tools. Okay? We've used the parts tons of times to help us create our details. So there's a couple of things that you can do with parts that make your details look better and work better. So the way you make parts is you click on a system family and you hit create parts, and boom, Revit splits it out. Now the great part about parts is the original family is untouched. Okay? It does not explode the wall. Okay? It creates a series of parts on top of that wall, and you can tell Revit, I want to see the original, I want to see the parts, I want to see both. Or you can delete all the parts and not hurt the original object in its entirety. Okay? So they are completely safe to use. There is no downside to them except for one, and I'll get to that here in a minute. Okay? Now, once you've split your family into parts, you can control them independently from their neighboring parts and from the original object itself. Okay? You can split them, you can divide them, you can merge them, you can exclude them, and if you get too far down the road, you can either delete them or you can reset them back to the original wall, floor, or roof shape. Okay? So this gives you complete control over how you want to manage your detailing. And you don't have to make parts out of every object in the model. You only have to make parts where you actually see the detail. Okay. Now, the downside of the parts. They do add to model size. Okay? It's not much, but the more you make, the more you'll see your models grow. When you go to regen specific views that have lots of parts in them, it will slow it down. Okay? We've done a couple of projects for contractors where we split out entire sets of walls or entire buildings into parts. And when you go to open a view, it takes 30, 40 seconds for it to regenerate itself. Okay? So again, use them when you need them, but don't automatically break every object you see into parts. Okay? So, let's take a look here. So here's this detail again. Okay, now we've already split it into parts, so I'm going to go ahead and just filter out my parts. And just delete them. Okay? Okay, now, I just deleted the parts. You saw the wall disappear, but then it came back because the original wall was still there. I didn't hurt it, I didn't change it, I didn't edit it. It's still exactly where I left it. Okay? So, if you get down the road and you're having problems with your parts or they're not working for you, it's as simple as just grabbing them all and deleting them. Okay? So I've got my wall back. Okay, now, a couple of things I want people to notice. The wall-ceiling intersection, okay, is wrong, okay? And the gypsum board goes all the way up to the underside of this rated ceiling up here, okay? And its interface is also wrong, okay? Now, let's go ahead and grab this. The Create Part button is right here at the end of the Modify Walls. Go ahead and click it. And it's going to go do and create some parts. Okay? Now, my view template is taking over here, so everything in the view properties is grayed out. But what it says is show parts. Okay, you kind of see it right up here. Where's my, right here, okay? And so the original wall has now disappeared. Can't see it anymore. It's still there. Okay, if you go to a different view, it'll be there. Okay. And now I've got these three parts. Now, I can immediately fix this problem. Okay, I click on this part, and I click Show Shape Handle. Okay, I've got my little shape handle, and I can drag it down to right there. Okay. Now that detail's starting to look more correct. This side doesn't have a ceiling over here, so I guess we'll leave it go all the way up. Okay. And then over here, okay, we can go ahead and show shape handle. We could pull this up and then put a detail component in here to show something different. So let's say we wanted to put a wainscoting in there, or if we had some masonry we wanted to put in there, or some stonework. Okay, we can adjust these. We haven't hurt the original model. It still shows the way it does. Your interior elevations might be different. You might need some work there. But you can create really quickly some very fast details by using the parts to take care of some of the little idiosyncrasies like the ceiling cleanup that Revit has. Okay.
Those are view specific.
They're view specific. No, well, they're not, because the parts are model. Rob asked if they're view specific. They're not, because you're adjusting the parts the way, and they will adjust in all views the correct way. But if you turn the parts off, if you go back to this view property up here and say show original, the parts go away. They disappear. And so you're back to your original model. So it's not view specific. They are model pieces.
Okay, so if you went down that wall 10 feet, cut it again,
You'd still see it.
you'd have the parts option.
Correct. Yeah. So Rob asked if you went down the wall and cut a different detail. Yes, you would still see the parts unless you switched it back to the show original. Okay. The other thing is that you can drag the parts, beyond their host. Okay. So in the case of this ceiling, I've already done that. I just wanted to kind of show you that for dramatic purposes. So the ceiling stops at the actual face of the wall. And so when you look at a GWB ceiling interfacing with a GWB wall, the gypsum board of the wall runs past the ceiling, and that's the way Revit does its ceilings, and it has since day one. My thought is that when they designed Revit's ceilings, it was designed for something like an ACT or a lay-in ceiling where it does go up to the gypsum board, but when you do an actual GWB ceiling, you'd like the GWB of the ceiling to be over the wall so that they don't sag. Okay. So those sorts of things Revit has always struggled with because of the differences in how buildings are built depending on their construction method. So what we did, so the ceiling actually stops right here. Okay, so what I did was I already dragged this past, and I dragged the joist past too, so that they interface with the wall. Now if this were steel, maybe I'd even do this, and then put a couple detail components in there to show that they're tacked to the edge of the stud. Okay, in this case they're wood, so they probably run up to it, maybe they go behind it, depends on how we built it, okay? So the parts now have given me the ability to start my detail while still using the model. I haven't introduced any two-dimensional items here yet at all, okay? Okay. Now, 3D details. Anybody here use 3D details? Okay. See some contractors raising their hand. Okay. Now, we have, ever since Revit, I think it was it 11 or 12 that they let you dimension inside 3D? 12? Oh, when they freeze. Yeah, freeze. I don't remember. I think it was 12. So I think since 12, we've been using 3D details where appropriate, okay? I'd love to get to the point where we could just always do all 3D details all the time, but we're not there yet, okay? Now, what they can do is they can convey information that would normally be contained in multiple views. Now, this helps you from a production point of view in that you don't need to do plan, section, elevation of a particular object, but it really helps the recipient, i.e. the contractor, because what you've conveyed to him by drawing this in 3D or presenting it in 3D is, hey, this is an important part of the building and I want you to take another look at it, okay? Now, lots of architects are handing models off to contractors and saying, here's my model, go figure it out. Now, walking through a giant model is very similar to flipping through a 300 set sheet of drawings. You don't know where the important stuff is until you spend some time with it, okay? Well, we all know what construction is like. Time is something nobody has. So, by making a 3D detail during your design process, you're showing the contractor, hey, this thing is important. So when he jumps into the model, number one, he's already got that view and he can use it himself. Number two, he can open the model up and jump over to that part of the building and say, oh, well, the architect spent the time to put this in 3D. Let's take a look at it and see why it's so important. Okay. Now, they do not add to your file size. Okay? You've already invested in the model. You've already added to the file size. You might as well get something out of it. Okay? So, here's an example of a nice 3D detail that we've been using. Okay? Something similar. This is a roof monitor. And what we've done is we've used the annotation tools and the dimension tools to show the contractor how tall things are, where the roof intersects it, how things stack on top of each other, where the windows are located, what type of windows they are. Now, one of the reasons we did this is this roof monitor is actually not visible in any of our exterior elevations. Okay? It's behind another roof in every single view. So we would have then had to come in and do an exterior elevation of the roof monitor. We would have had to do a ceiling plan. We would have had to do a roof plan. We would have had to do, well, actually 4 elevations. We had to do at least 2 sections, okay? And all of that information, and we did do that, by the way, because the architect that we were working with was still uncomfortable with this. But that being said, we'd still presented this as it is, because this was nearly free. This took about half an hour to build, okay? Because the model was already done. When we did all this, then all the information that was conveyed on, I think, 12 views is picked up in a single view. Okay? So we were able to do that very, very quickly. Now, there are some downsides to this. These 2 areas, amongst others, are areas that are missing information. Okay? As soon as you jump into 3D with these, and as soon as you start showing stuff, then people expect to see the model down to the nth degree. Okay? So, there's no framing shown in the walls, and there's no framing shown for the soffits or the roof. Okay? And that's because the structural engineer, of course, doesn't detail out the framing down to the 2x2. Okay? I mean, it's basically just carpentry at that point. There's no structural value to it. And we don't typically model all the wood studs. Okay? So one of the issues that we run into when we're doing this is how far do you take it? Okay? So what we did was we sort of just put a generic note around there and said, see XYZ for framing details in this area. Okay? Now, one of the things I want to point out to people is that when you start doing this, you have to be very, very careful, either to make sure that those areas are picked up by a note or another detail or some other way, and B, that you don't fall down the rabbit hole of trying to model it to the point where you're starting to put nails in it. Okay? Oops, okay. Got ahead of myself there. Okay. Anybody have any question on 3D details? Okay, 2D details. Now, as I said, 3D details cannot take the place of 2D. We still have to do it, okay? And I'd say 90% of my details that we produce are all two-dimensional. We use those 3D ones as sort of frosting on the cake, as it were. Okay. Now, parts are great, and we use them a lot, but they are not the answer for all detailing scenarios. Okay. So, for most of our detailing, we use detail components. Okay. Revit's detail components are two-dimensional elements that create intelligent details. They're easy to create and modify. They take 5-10 minutes each. They're family and type driven, just like every other object in Revit. They have a very small footprint. Okay? Some of my detail components, I think, are 3K. Not meg, K. Okay? And Revit already ships with a full asterisk library. Okay? There's 620 detail components in the out-of-the-box Revit library. Okay? Now, that's just the families. Each one of those families has upwards of a couple hundred types. I've never actually been able to calculate how many families and types there are in there, but the steel beams alone have 700 types. Okay? So there's a couple thousand possibilities in just the out-of-the-box Revit library. So, a couple of things to remember when you're doing detailing in Revit. All your 2D elements sit on top of the model. Okay? This can be both good and bad. Okay? So but remember, there is no way to get a detail component to appear behind the model. Okay? You have the ability to control the line work inside your component. Okay? So you don't need to use the line tool as much as you think you do. And since they're type driven, as you can see, this is my 2x variable width 2x. Okay, so we have a detail component that's a 2x, so basically a section cut that covers all of our 2x lumber requirements. One family, half a dozen types. Okay. So here's an example of that. These are all the same family, okay? We use them to mask or cover the model elements, okay? We can control the line work, and our type drives our annotation tool, which we'll talk about in a little while, okay? And all of our size, opacity, and blocking settings are instance-based. So here are the properties. Here's our blocking control that turns blocking on or off, makes it a single line versus an X. And this is our opacity control, which allows us to see through or have the model, or have it mask the model, or whatever else is behind it. Okay? All of the types that you see in this list, all they do is drive the annotation. Everything else is instance-based. The size is instance-based, the opacity is instance-based, and the X line is instance-based. Okay? So you can see right here, this is a blocking. This is a refer to wall assembly for stud, and this is a 2x framing. Okay? These are all notes that we've developed and can be edited at any time. But they will not edit together because they're 3 different types. Now, when you make a detail component or edit one of the ones that comes with Revit, you will discover that they consist of very, very simple objects. Okay? 90% of them consist of a filled region or a masking region, okay, Revit's version of a hatch pattern. Some of them have lines defining the boundary of the region and an additional line for other graphics. Some of them are basically just masks. Okay? And the masking region or the lines can be visibility controlled, and we use types to control the annotations. So, this is the family that we've been looking at in the family editor. Okay? So the box that outlines the actual stud or board is a filled region with thin lines around, or medium lines around it. And then there's the 2 X's, one of them controlled by a yes/no parameter. Okay? This took me 10 minutes to build in its parametrices. We have used this well over hundreds of thousands of times over the last 10 years. Okay, so it's absolutely paid for itself. Okay. Both of the dimensions are instance parameters. Okay. But the 1.5 inches is locked. Because this is a 2x, we don't want them changing the thickness of it. We also have a 3x and a 4x and a 5x. We have a number of other width ones. So the width is always fixed, the length is adjustable. Okay? And we do that because Revit, of course, ships with a 2x4, 2x6, 2x8, 2x10, 4x4, et cetera, et cetera. Well, what happens when you need a 2x5? Or what happens when you're pushing a piece of blocking into a corner of a roof and you need it to show cut off at a funny dimension that a carpenter is just going to get a saw and go and just cut it off, okay? So this gives us the ability to say we need a 2x2.5, okay? Or a whatever we need as a blocking size to fit into a particular location. Okay. So here's my variable stud, variable width. Okay, so we can go ahead and plop it in here, let's say. Oops. Okay, and so you can see. Oh, it didn't. Maybe I gotta. There we go. Sorry. Okay. So let me go ahead and place a detail component. So we get that right here, detail component. So this is the 2x. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and put it right here. And you can see it's masking the model behind it. Okay. Covers it up. Okay. If I turn off the opacity, you can see the model behind it. And if I turn off the blocking control, you can see it shows as a single line. Okay. And when I change its type, you can see nothing is really changing about it. Okay, that one's a little different. Okay, nothing is really changing about it because all we're changing is the annotation in the background, and we haven't annotated it yet, so we don't actually see any updates to it. Okay. So we can go ahead and copy this over to here, and let's take it up here, and we'll rotate it. Oops. There we go. And we'll move it up into position, and we'll copy it one more time to make our double top plate. Like that, okay? So we're really quickly starting to build out this detail without spending a lot of time at it, okay? And we can start to use things. So one of my other favorite ones is the break line. Okay, so we can come and put our break line in here, and our break line in there. Okay, you see the brake line's got a mask on it. So we just need to rotate this one around like that, and then pull it into position. And by putting it up against the crop region and turning off the crop region, which doesn't print, by the way, so you can get a nice broken detail. Okay, we've got a number of different brake lines. We've got one that has brake lines on top and bottom, so you can split a detail out. And just mask the detail itself without using the crop region. We've got them with different sized break conditions and all sorts of different things like that. Oops. Accidentally turned off the crop region. There we go. Okay, so you can do a number of different things with these break lines and with the masking tools. Now, the big time saver in using these components is the ability to automate your annotation. Okay? So, for our detailing, we primarily use these 4 items, and we use the top 3 rather than the keynotes. We'll talk about different ones, different pros and cons of each. So the first one we use is material tags. Okay? Material tags are extraordinarily versatile because they will tag the material that they touch, no matter what it's in. Okay? So if you've built a material into your element, then the material tag will identify it. The detail component tag is just like a wall tag or a door tag or a window tag, but it tags detail items. Okay? So those wood studs that I've been placing in there, we can tag them with a detail component tag, and it will identify them. We also build custom model component tags to identify different types of model components as well. And then if you want to use the keynoting system in Revit, you can use a keynote tag to tag materials or components, or in the case, or a user keynote tag, and we'll talk about those too. Okay? All right. Now, when you use a material tag, it displays one of the material properties of the material that is under the tag. Okay? Typically, the one that's out of the box Revit shows the material description, and that is what the material tag, our material tag, uses as well. However, there's a number of different components you can use. Now, all items of the same material will display the same note. Okay? So if you need 2 different notes, you'll have to have 2 different materials. They're type-based. Okay? This requires you to set up and manage your material library from the very minimum of having a material identified and having a name or a description or something else associated with it. So, material dialog box shows you what all the materials are. The tag can read from the following locations: comments, cost, manufacturer, mark, which is the type mark for the material, model, name, URL, or you can add your own custom shared parameter if you so choose. Okay? As I said, we use the material description as our note. Okay? Anytime we need to change the note, we have to make a new material. Okay? Not real hard, just have to remember to do it. Okay? Detail tags. Detail tags tag any detail component. Now that means they will also tag filled regions and symbols. Okay, so the detail components, filled regions, and symbols all tag with the same tag. Okay? You can use a common parameter that they're already there. Okay, ours uses the type mark. Or you can create your own custom shared parameter for the detail items. Okay? And the parameter, by the way, can be type or instance based. However, if you make an instance parameter for it, you'll have to retype your notes for every single one. Okay? If you use the type parameter, once you fill out a note for a particular detail type, you will never have to type that note again in this project. Okay? And we've started to build our detail component library with the notes already baked in so that when they come into the project, we don't have to type the notes at all. Okay? So here's an example. Okay? We have 3 detail components here, actually. Okay? There's our soffit vent. Okay? This is not a model object. It is a masking element. Okay? It masks the model underneath it. I didn't see any point in modeling soffit vent all the way around the building. Okay? We just throw this component in there, it tags, and then we have, okay, we have our fascia. Now, so we tag this a 1x3 trim. Okay? It's reading the type mark. Sorry. Okay. Now, model component tags. Okay, if you're using 3D model elements as part of your details, you will need to be able to tag those components as a detail, right? We don't want to tag our wall and just have it say wall type A1, okay? We want to be able to tag our wall and show all the different components of it, okay? We want to be able to tag our structural elements and show the different components of it and not just have a generic tag. So we often will develop special tags that tag model components as if they were part of the detail, okay? Part tags, okay? How many people here knew you could tag parts? 2, okay? I didn't know it either until about a year ago, okay? It never even occurred to me that you could tag a part, but you can, okay? And parts don't have a type, so all of your tags will be instance-based, which doesn't really get you anything because you're still going to have to type the note every single time you tag the same part, okay? But they do tag with the material tag, and I'll show you a shortcut here to make your details look better using the part, okay? How many people use Revit's keynote system? A few? Okay. So the keynote tags work exactly the same as the material and the element tags, but they're driven by an external file as opposed to the notes in the internal file. So basically, you grab your keynote tag, you tag your element, Revit brings up the dialog box and asks you what the keynote you'd like to pick is. You pick the right keynote, and from then on, that element tags with that keynote. And if the external file changes the note, your keynotes will update. Okay? So there's 3 different types of keynote tags. Element, which will tag your detail components, your model components, your parts. Okay? You have a material keynote tag, which tags the materials, but it reads the keynote file instead of reading the material information. And then you have a user keynote tag, which lets you pick what note you would like to use for that one instance. Okay? So if you've got a special location where you need to have a different type of gypsum wallboard, you can use the user keynote tag to adjust it so that that one time reads differently. Okay. Now, excuse me, you can only set one keynote per type unless you use the user keynote, okay? And the value of that depends on the external file. And so if the external file is wrong, your keynotes are wrong, okay? The keynote file is a text file, very simple, okay? It's tab delimited. We often use Microsoft Excel to read them, edit them, and create them. And it has 3 columns of data: the keynote value, the keynote description, and the level above, which allows the keynote dialog box to expand and collapse. Okay? Now the keynote value has to be unique. If you look at the Revit keynote file, you'll discover that it is the master format ID. Okay? So Revit's keynote files use master format as their unique identifier. The keynote description is the note that you would like to appear when you keynote something. And then the level above obviously controls whether you want it to expand or collapse. Okay? File can be firm-wide. So do you guys use a firm-wide keynote file, or is it project-based? Okay, so he says both. And there's good reason for that. Because if you need a unique note and you're keynoting, you can't do it. You got to go back to the file and put it in there. Or you have to use one of the other tools. Okay. So what usually happens, Rob, when they don't get a keynote note? If there's no keynote in the file that they need, what do? What if they need a gold-plated file? Yeah, so, okay. So what Rob said was, when they can't find a keynote in the keynote file, they use the text tool. That's not a standard. Okay. Which is what we're all trying to avoid, is to use the text tool. So that's one of my biggest complaints about keynoting, is there's no easy way to add a keynote note to the file without shutting Revit down, going to Microsoft Excel, opening what's probably a read-only file to begin with, and somehow inserting a note where you need it to go, then going back just so you can type one note. No, we're all going to use the text tool. Just, it's a fact of life, okay? You can, yes. You can reload it, but by the time you go through all of that, we could have all typed the note. Yeah. And you know what? You're right most of the time, but I've had it not reload it. It will just sit and sit and sit and sit and spin, and nothing happens. And it has to do, if they're read-only especially, it seems to not like it. And I have had it, then you'd go in and 5 minutes later it just pops up. So I think it also depends on how many notes there are. And if you've got 12 people detailing, you can't all jump into the keynote file and put notes in it. So, okay. So this is the keynoting tool. Okay. Now, this is the user keynote tool. Does anybody see anything wrong with this one? You don't think that's a wide flange beam? Okay, sorry. So I use the user keynote tool to identify that piece of trim as a W14 by 283. Okay. This is the drawback to the user keynote tool. Now, the good news is, the next time I tag that, if I don't use the user keynote tool, it will correctly identify itself. There isn't a proper keynote associated with the type. But by using the user keynote, I can override it and identify it as anything I want. Okay? What usually happens is you usually end up identifying it as a 1x4 because that's the next one in the list. It's not, there's the 1x3 trim and the W14 by 283 are nowhere near each other in the list. But what often happens is it ends up identifying it as a 1x4 when we've drawn it as a 1x3 or 1x2 or something like that, or whatever the next item in the list is. There's no way to flag it, no. And there's not. You know what? Even the quality, even the Revit model review can't find those. Okay. And so everybody says, when I talk to them about keynote files and I say, well, you realize, of course, that you can't just insert notes on the fly. Oh, well, I just use the user keynote tool. Okay, well, the user keynote tool still has to have an entry in the keynote file to choose from. Okay, so it's not I get to type in my own values. It still has to have somewhere in that list to pick from. So the keynote file is fairly locked down to those notes. Okay, so just be aware of that. And you can only have one keynote file associated with a project at a time. And so when Rob said he uses both, then I assume they start with the master and copy it to the project and then use that one. Yeah. But if someone reassociates it back to the master, all the notes will change. So just be careful about that. And the other thing is, when you transmit your models, you've got to transmit the keynote file with it, or the person at the other end will get a bunch of question marks. Okay. Okay, so let's look at some annotation. Okay, so here's my tag by category, and here's my material tag. So I'm going to go ahead and tag this right here, okay? So it already automatically tags. And I can go ahead and tag this. Okay. And I can tag this. Now you see this doesn't have a material. Anybody know why? Because it's a two-dimensional detail component, okay? So in this case, I have to use the tag by category, okay? And it identifies itself as wood blocking. And if I change its type to, you see my note is updating. Okay, so I can change my notes by just making new types. And if we needed a special note for this, we can then come in here and say, okay, and we update our note. Now, in the future, every time I use that particular type, the note will update, okay? So I don't have to type that note ever again, okay? This absolutely saves us a ton of time down the road when we go to use our detailing, okay? We only type our notes one time per project until we need a different note, okay? Now here's the other cool part that I like to talk about parts. How many people here have a bathroom in their building? Come on, everybody raise your hand. Okay. Okay, how many people make a new wall type just to get water-resistant gypsum board on the bathroom side of the wall? How many people put a text note in there that says water-resistant gypsum board rather than redo their wall type? Okay. Now, let's assume this is not a storage room, and let's assume that this is a bathroom. Okay. We have our part on this side of the wall. Okay. Down here is this nice little parameter that says material by original. If I uncheck that, the material parameter lights up, and I can pick a new material for it. And I'm just going to go ahead, wait, do I have a water resistant already? No, I don't. Oops. We'll just say WR. Okay, and I'll come over to my identity here, and I'm just going to type. Okay. Okay, and now I'm going to use my material tag to identify it. Okay, now, I've not made a new wall type. Okay, my wall types are still intact. The original wall still is intact, it hasn't changed. But by changing the part information, I can update my details where I need to. Okay. Now, everybody, you know, the BIM purists among us will say, well, that's not very BIM. You should create a new wall type because then everywhere you have a bathroom, you'll automatically have it, you know, and the owner will have it down the road and on and on and on. But the reality of the scenario is you would end up with thousands of wall types just to change the paint color on one side or the other. Okay. And we end up with cases where we've got ceramic tile on part of the wall, and we'd have to stop the wall and pick it up with water resistance. So there's all these different configurations, and the contractor already knows not to put regular gypsum board in the bathroom. He's not going to go do that wrong. I mean, yeah, it's great that you have the detail that shows him, but he's probably not going to screw it up. He'll probably come back with a change order because it's 10% more than the regular one, but at least in this case, you're covered with that. But, you know, we all know that buildings have been built before this happened, and we all know that, you know, taking that BIM to that level may just be overkill. Okay, so this is a quick way for you guys to update using the parts tool to allow you to change information in just that one little spot where you need it to be. Okay. Okay, so this is my keynote file, our keynote tag that we were talking about earlier, where it was, you know, obviously incorrectly keynoted. Okay. If you click on the detail component itself, you'll see that it has a keynote value right here. Okay, and that is what's driving the main keynote for it. So if I just go ahead and grab my keynote tool, keynote, element keynote, and click on it, whoops, missed. Okay. You can see that it's picking up the right information automatically. This note has its own property that's picking the keynote from the list. Okay. And this is the keynote list right here. Okay. So let's go ahead and clear out the keynote value for this. Click OK. You'll see everything jumps to a question mark. Okay. And the keynote file that I'm using is set right here. Okay, so you can go browse for it. There's our demo keynote file. Okay. And so if we go into here, we grab this guy, we go to its types, go to keynote. Okay, so we'll go to 06 and go to 06200. And there's my note right there. Click OK. Click OK, and it updates. Now, if we need to change that note, okay, we can open it up here. You can see what it looks like in just Notepad. Okay, I usually quick search for 06220. Okay, and there it is. And you can see here's my note right here, primed for painting. And we're just going to say, we're just going to get rid of for painting. We're just going to say primed. just to make it shorter, okay? Go ahead and save my keynote file. Okay, now, so Revit hasn't picked up on it yet, so we need to just go back to that keynote file and hit browse, hit open. And there is? Oh, there is, okay. That's a new one. Hadn't seen it. We don't use them just because they're so restrictive, so I don't get into it very much. So there you see my notes updated. Okay. And it updated both of these notes, but it did not update that one because that one's still driving itself off the user. Okay. Okay. So there's all the little techniques. But let's talk about how we get this all to work for us, okay, instead of against us. So the first thing I ask people to do is make a firm detailing library, okay? Make your own. Don't operate off the Revit out-of-the-box one, okay? So typically we start with the out-of-the-box one because there's thousands of details in there ready to use, okay? We use a rename tool to add a prefix to all of the detail components in your new library. So basically, copy the Revit detail library over to your network somewhere. And then there's a number of different rename tools out there that you can get to prefix all your files. Okay? And then we delete the uncommon ones and or folders. Okay? We get rid of some of the site ones, we get rid of some of the structural ones, and some of the oddball ones that we just never use. Okay? Because they just add clutter to our library. And then we change the organization if desired. So Revit's detail library currently uses Master Spec 2004. Some people find that onerous. Some people just like to have them all in one folder with nice naming conventions. Some people, create their own folder system, etc. And then use them. Okay? And as soon as you start to use them, you'll start to find things that aren't quite right. You'll make some little edits to them. Okay? And so also, let your users alter them. Don't lock the library down, okay? Back it up occasionally. Make sure your recent projects are dumping detail components back into the library. And then make sure you're using the parameter data where you can. So also, make sure you set some graphics standards for people so that they get the right line types, okay? And you can associate them with subcategory names. You can associate patterns with subcategory names, use those subcategories when you build the family, and then you don't need to set individual line weights in every single family. The project will control it for you. Also, allow all your users to alter the detail components. Don't make the library read-only. Okay? The time investment in one component is very, very small. If somebody screws it up, erase it and make a new one. Okay? This gives your users the freedom to detail as they need and to use the components properly. Okay? Yes, I understand that someone spent 3 days building a door family. You don't want someone to accidentally screw that up. Okay? But realistically, it should take you 10 minutes to build a detail component. If someone messes it up, erase it and start over. And then set up your annotation standards. Decide on a tagging method. Okay, do you guys want to use material tags and component tags? Do you want to use a keynote system? Okay, make all your tags ahead of time and make them all look the same so that you can't tell the difference. They all just look like notes. All my tags look like notes. End users can't tell the difference. And most people, when they look at my Revit file, if they haven't actually clicked on stuff, think I'm just using text. Okay, and then make sure all those tags are in the template ready to go. And then decide what parameter those tags are going to use, and always use the same parameter. Okay? So the user jumps into a detail component, he knows to change the description. He jumps into a material tag, he knows to change the description. So use the same detail, use the same parameter in the different tags so that the annotations work correctly. Okay? And the other option would be to set up a shared parameter. Okay? Call it XYZ firm annotation. Okay? You can put that into materials, you can put that into components, you can put that into objects, you can put that into details. If you have this common shared parameter, then the user can fill out the same parameter in every object and get the same information from different types of tags. Okay. So use all the available tools so you can create fast, smart details. Combine them in smart ways so that the details reflect the model information and are correct in your annotation and graphics. Okay? As I said before, use your parts to pick up spot materials. Okay? So the toilet room needs the water resistant. Okay? Oops, there we go. Okay. And this, I color-coded my detail so you guys could see what a composite detail looks like. And I'm just going to go ahead and bring it up in Revit. Did we lose it? Yay. So this is the same detail. Okay. So the model objects are in pink. The parts are in blue. The detail components are in red. And the lines are in green. Okay. So you can see we do have a few lines in there. But the note at the top, which, by the way, I did not add to this detail, was already there. Lines are placeholder for the structural model. So in the case of this detail, the structural engineer had not given us the joists or anything else for this particular part of the model. And so we drew lines in there so the detail looked right until we got the structural model as the background and could get rid of them. Okay? And so we have a big red line, what we call red line text that we use to put notes off the side of our details that notes to ourselves basically saying that, hey, you know, there's a placeholder here for XYZ. Okay? And so if you look, you can see that that's a material tag, material tag, material tag. So most of these are being driven off of material tags. Okay? That's actually a component tag. Okay? There's a piece, there's the actual structural model itself. And you can see what I did was the pieces of text are actually half-toned. So you can see we've got 1, 2, 3 pieces of text, and they all refer to structural elements that aren't there yet. Okay. So the number of pieces of text we use in a detail is typically in the single digits. Okay. And we use them sparingly for general notes in some cases or to identify items that are not yet in the model. Okay. We want to make sure that all of our notes are consistent and all of our objects are annotated in the same manner. If we screw up a note, it screws it up across the entire project, but we only have to fix it once. Okay, so a couple of things with this one. The vent masks the soffit. Okay, parts change the annotation because the GWB has a different note. Remember, the parts will show up in different views. Okay, the parts are tagged by material, and the details are tagged by component. Okay, so in conclusion, detailing Revit can be easier than CAD. Okay, we find this way easier than what we were doing before. Revit's tools will save you time and help you reduce errors. Your detail components are fast, they're easy to manage, and they're quick to use. And libraries of components can be created in a couple of hours for the entire firm. And then using your annotation tools will save you time typing notes and reduce errors in mistyping, misspelling, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? And I want to thank everybody for coming. Got a good turnout today. Does anybody have any questions? Yes?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay.
When you place a detailed component in a, say, a section view, if you move the component, like say the wall or say it's a panel, you shift it over to those, are those kind of sticky to that component? Or?
So the question was, if you place a detail component in a view and you move the wall or the element underneath it, will the detail component move with it? The answer is no. Okay. You will still need to go back and make sure that your detail components match the model. But if you had a drafted view and the model shifted, we'd never know. And it would just be wrong. Okay? At least this way it'll be obvious that it's wrong. And it's a drafting error, not an architectural error. So, got time for one more. Anybody else have any quick question?
Well, one thing to add, you can lock
Yes, but what tends, so his question is, his comment was you can lock to model geometry, and yes, you can do that. What tends to happen is if the model moves, then the element gets deleted rather than shifting. If it can shift, it will, but if it can't shift, it just goes away. And when it goes away, it takes out the note, so it's a sort of a chain reaction. And what happens is that the user who's doing it gets the little dialogue in the box that says, by moving this wall, you're about to delete 750,000 objects, and he says, okay. And then half your model, all your detail components go, and then you come back, and you think they're there, and you hit print, and all your details are blank. So had that happen a couple of times. Not 750,000, but we have lost a few detail components because they were locked into a position, especially the linear ones. If they reverse, they're gone. Okay?
Okay. All right. I want to say thank you to Chris. That was a great presentation. Nice. Actually, really good. I've learned quite a few things, actually. So first of all, I want to thank the Quarry Group and Chris Hubbard for sponsoring and also presenting today. He'll definitely hang around. I know kind of ran late on questions, so feel free to come on up and ask a few more. Stephen is here from Pierce College. If you have any dimension I put out earlier for any area you kind of have some expertise you feel might help the development of the curriculum down there. There's also the contact information. We'll have that posted as well. Maybe you can pass the word if you know somebody. Our next meeting is September 18th. And so now we'll do a quick draw for these 2 cards. Just go ahead and pull 2 names out of there.
David L. Bergen.
David L. Bergen. Oh, right there, front center. Nice. And
Timothy Logan.
I saw. All right. Okay, come on down. Thanks, everybody. If you didn't get enough to lunch, help yourself. And we'll see you next month. Thanks a lot.